God only knows what you've been through. God only knows what they say about you. God only knows how it's killing you. But there's a kind of love that God only knows. God only knows what you've been through. God only knows what they say about you. But God only knows the real you. There's a kind of love that God only knows.
Welcome to the 8th episode of Your Journey Is Not Over. My name is Tanya Pearson Randolph. This is my own personal journey. The expressions and opinions are of my own. I own all the rights to my personal journey and to Your Journey Is Not Over. Neither are to be used, copied, edited in any way without my consent. Let me get started. It was during this time I was about 10 years old. My grandma moved in with an aunt and an uncle. I had stayed with all of the family so much. Some not so nice, and others were great to stay with. The thing about my family is they never hesitated to tell my brother and I all the horrible things about our mother, but would never say those things to our mother. Even when she wasn't around, I still had to hear everything bad about her, her lifestyle, her habits. I said in the very beginning that she was never held accountable. It was always put on my brother and I. Even though, according to my grandma, my mother had always been that way. Just now, she had 2 kids to blame for everything. She truly played the victim to our entire family, and they all fell for it, instead of us kids being the true victims. I know I keep saying only in my family, and I've realized I truly need to stop saying that, because I'm quite sure it wasn't only my family. Every family has their own issues and trauma, maybe not as severe as others, but there's no competition when it comes to trauma. What might not seem like nothing to some could be life-changing and detrimental to others. So there is no comparing or one-upping when it comes to trauma. That's why we are all individually designed and created by God. We are all unique, and our experiences and trauma are what we internalize individually. And for most, we carry with us our entire life. I got off track for a moment, so let me get back on track. During this time, I was about 10 years old, and my mother had wore out my welcome with everyone in the family. So then she started leaving me alone all the time, after school and on weekends. Sometimes I would go weeks and not see her, but I could tell she had been at our apartment because I could smell her perfume or her cigarette smoke, but I wouldn't see her. Even when I think back, I am just shocked that at that age, I was getting myself up and ready for school every day. Have you seen my school pictures from then? The proof is there, believe you me. I was still silent at school. I can remember going days not speaking to one person. Still, I know this is hard for people to believe now because I'm very vocal and I'm very long winded. My friends always included me at lunch and at recess. They just knew and accepted that I didn't talk. Also, during this time was a huge adjustment. My brother wasn't there, so I was having to navigate how to do everything on my own and also how to deal with our mother. That year alone, 4th grade, I had the best teacher, but her hands were tied on certain things. For instance, field trips. Of course, every kid is excited for a field trip, and I've always been so inquisitive when it comes to anything at all, really. The permission slips are sent home, like always, so I would put those permission slips in the bathroom so she would see them, hopefully, sign it, and leave me the dollar or $1.50 for the field trip. Mind you, it was in the 70s. You would think that would be easy, right? Not for my mother. Nothing was never easy with her. The teacher would be reminding us that we need to get our slips in, along with our money. Believe me, I would try. Of course I wanted to go. I was a kid. If I did happen to see my mother, I would gently approach it with her, and I always got the same results. Hollered at, screamed at, cussed at, called names, and made to feel guilty for asking for the money. Same thing every field trip. I didn't get to go on any field trips 4th or 5th grade. When I did try to go, that was always the outcome, so I quit trying and didn't even bother to ask anymore. It wasn't worth being tore down completely, so every single field trip, I was left behind and made to spend the day in the cafeteria, or I would be invited to hang out at the principal's office with him and his secretary. I remember my teacher taking me out in the hallway many times, and she would look so heartbroken and would apologize to me that she had to leave me behind. Of course, it was neither of our faults. During this year is when I got braces, not for vanity at all. It was a way for my mother to make my adopted dad, her ex-husband, pay big money out of his pocket. So, for revenge, essentially. In the long run, that did work out for me. I was already withdrawn, shy, quiet, and now braces. It made me a magnet for bullies. I was called all kinds of names: train tracks, brace face, and I have fuller lips anyway, so the braces made my lips look bigger. There's a name that I got called a lot that I can't repeat. I will say it was a racial slur when it came to my lips. It made me so self conscious. I was at the age where my body was changing. I like to call it the ugly duckling stage, which, by the way, was always one of my favorite books to read. How the ugly duckling grew up to become a beautiful swan. I've used that story to inspire so many kids in my life that were at that ugly duckling stage. And every single child I have ever told that story to, guess what? They grew up to become just that, a beautiful swan. So I'm in my ugly duckling stage, braces on my teeth, and I'm built big bone. So maybe I looked chunky at the time. I don't know how, because all I was getting to eat was school lunch. This became the excuse my mother used on me for not buying groceries. I needed to lose weight. I was called all kinds of names by her over my weight and my ugliness. My mother had a friend who I later called my aunt. She is also the same person I stayed with when my mother had tried to commit suicide. She would come in town once every other month because her job kept her gone. She would stay with me. Sadly, it would only be for a couple of days, but she would always get upset when she would look in our refrigerator and our cabinets, and she would say, "Tanya Ann, what have you been eating?" I would explain to her that all that I was getting to eat was school lunch, and the weekends were so long and so painful. So my aunt would go to the store, fix me up pre made meals to just heat up in the oven. She wanted to make sure I had food, and I would get fed good while she was there. Always a trip to McDonald's, which was such a treat to me. Only problem was when she would leave me food, my mother would either take it to wherever she was staying, or she would take inventory of what was left for me, and I would be forbidden to fix it. Like I said, weekends were painful. I couldn't ask my grandma for help because she lived with my aunt and uncle, and of course she didn't drive. I did call my brother, or try. Like I said, that became a heartbreaking challenge. Before I go any further on this, I want to explain to everyone that the family that my brother was made to go live with were also the same people that wanted to adopt me when I was born. And my mother said no and took me to Kentucky to my grandparents. I still say at 53 years old, that's the best decision my mother ever made regarding me. Again, her decision, but I was made to pay for that decision dearly, not her. Again, my opinion has always been these family members had money, more than anyone in our family, and along with money, that also gave them power. And truly, I think I was something, not a person, something these people wanted and even their money couldn't buy. So again, resentment towards me, the child, and never towards my mother. They were very vocal behind my mother's back, but again, would never say anything to her face. So the same family that nicknamed me Orphan Annie would also block my phone calls to my brother. Many times I was helpless, hungry, and alone and scared. So of course I would try to call my brother. Even if he couldn't help me, it always helped to hear his voice, and he always knew what to say to reassure me and calm me down. That is when I could get through to him. When I would call at some point or another by every single one of these family members, I was told I wasn't my brother's problem. It wasn't his responsibility to take care of me anymore. And who cares that I didn't have food? That was on my mother. I was also told many times that he was no longer my brother. Looking at it now, no wonder I'm so prideful. I don't ask for help from anybody. Now I realize why. Because every time I did as a child, I got insulted or talked to horrible or degraded for it. I was told I better not call back. One time I seen my brother and I told him what was being said when I did call him. He told me to ignore them and to just keep calling. He worked in their garage all the time and there was a phone out there, so sometimes I would get lucky and he would answer. As adults, he told me there were times that he could tell someone else was on another phone in the house listening in. Those were the times he would have to act like he didn't care and would cut our conversation short. Because if they knew I got a hold of him and he talked to me, he would get in trouble. If they listened in and he acted cold towards me, then they were happy and he wouldn't get in trouble. I know, sick, right? Why else would you treat a helpless, hungry, scared child like that? My brother never got brainwashed or deprogrammed. He just learned how to outsmart them and beat them at their own game. Yes, he would always call me back and somehow find a way to get to me and bring me food. Many times. And when he would bring me food, he would be so nervous of getting caught. It would be a real quick drop off, a kiss on the forehead, and I love you, and you didn't see me, sis. He would always tell me if he got caught, he would be in trouble, and they would make sure that he never could even get the chance to bring me food again. I know it's mind boggling, and if I hadn't have lived it, it would be hard for me to believe too. I'm now realizing how truly therapeutic it is for me to unpack all of this trauma. Almost like I had this humongous suitcase that was so heavy that I've been carrying around with me my whole life. Even though it's been emotional and challenging, I have to say it's nice to finally put that suitcase up on a luggage rack and unzip it and begin to unpack it for the first time in my life. I truly am exploring and learning so much about myself, and with the knowledge, I can truly embrace and love myself for the first time ever. This concludes my podcast for today. Please join me Thursday. Until then, please always remember your journey is not over. God bless.
God only knows what you've been through. God only knows what they say about you. God only knows how it's killing you. But there's a kind of love that God only knows. God only knows what you've been through.